Norman N. Holland's book, The Shakespearean Imagination, is a thoughtful and engaging book that understands how Shakespeare's plays work on our minds and emotions. Holland uses psychology, literary analysis, and imagination to explore how Shakespeare connects deeply with his audience. Instead of just looking at historical facts or literary styles, Holland focuses on how we as readers and viewers experience Shakespeare's works. He believes that Shakespeare uses certain patterns and ideas that touch us at a personal, emotional level, allowing us to enter the world of the play in a meaningful way. At the heart of Holland's book is the idea that imagination plays a central role in both creating and experiencing Shakespeare's drama. Shakespeare is to use their imagination to fill in details, feel the characters' emotions, and enter into their struggles. Holland argues that this imaginative participation is what gives the plays their power. We are not just watching events, we are emotionally involved in them. In the opening chapters, Holland explores how Shakespeare sets up a special kind of world in his plays. These are not realistic worlds in the modern sense, they are full of magic, mistaken identities, ghosts, and dreams. But they are not completely fantasy either. Holland calls these worlds as if worlds. They ask the audience to imagine as if this could really happen, even though we know it is not real. This balance between reality and imagination is key to the Shakespearean experience. It allows us to explore deep truths about life without being held back by the limits of everyday reality. Holland then moves on to discuss the different genres of Shakespeare's plays: comedy, tragedy, history, and romance. Each type of play, he argues, creates a different kind of imaginative world and invites us to respond in a different emotional way. In the comedies, Shakespeare often plays with identity and confusion. People dress up as someone else, fall in love with the wrong person, or get caught in complicated situations. But in the end, everything is usually resolved in a just that these comedies appeal to our desire for harmony and joy. They allow us to imagine a world where problems are temporary and love wins out. In the tragedies, the emotional experience is much darker. He spends a lot of time discussing Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. These plays deal with deep fears and questions about death, madness, betrayal, and meaning. Holland believes that the tragic imagination is different from the comic one. It forces us to face difficult truths and to go through emotional suffering. But even here, Shakespeare gives us something valuable. By facing these dark emotions in a safe, imaginative space, we learn something about ourselves and the human condition. Holland gives special attention to Hamlet. He believes that Hamlet is a character who reflects the audience's own thoughts and feelings. Hamlet is always thinking, questioning, and imagining possibilities. He talks to himself, doubts his own actions, and tries to understand his place in the world. For Holland, Hamlet is the perfect example of how Shakespeare uses imagination to explore the self. Hamlet is not just a prince. He is a mirror in which we see our own doubts and questions. When Holland discusses Macbeth, he focuses on how imagination can turn dangerous. Macbeth is a character whose imagination runs wild. He sees visions, hears voices, and imagines greatness. But his imagination leads him to murder and ruin. How Shakespeare explores the dark side of imagination, how it can tempt us and trick us, especially when it is mixed with ambition or fear. In King Lear, Holland sees a powerful example of how Shakespeare breaks down the world of the play and then rebuilds it. Lear starts out as a proud king who wants to divide his kingdom, but he ends up losing everything, including his sanity. The play takes us through a journey of destruction, but in the end, we gain a new sense of truth and human connection. Holland believes that King Lear is one of the deepest expressions of the Shakespearean imagination because it confronts the audience with suffering and loss, but also with insight and compassion. Holland also explores the history plays like Henry IV and Richard III. He sees these plays as blending fact and fiction. Shakespeare takes real historical figures and events but reshapes them with drama and imagination. In the history plays, audience is asked to think about power, leadership, and the role of individuals in history. These plays don't just teach history, they explore how people imagine and remember the past. In the later chapters, Holland turns to the romances like The Tempest, The Winter's Tale, and Cymbeline. These plays combine tragedy and comedy. They usually involve suffering, loss, and mistakes, but they end in forgiveness and renewal. Holland sees the romances as the most hopeful and imaginative of Shakespeare's plays. They deal with time, magic, and the possibility of change. In The Tempest, for example, the magician Prospero learns to forgive and let go. Holland sees this as a sign of Shakespeare's own development, both as an artist and as a person. These plays suggest that the imagination can heal and restore, not just destroy or confuse. Throughout the book, Holland emphasizes the relationship between the audience and the play. He believes that Shakespeare deliberately leaves some things open or unfinished so that the audience must participate. We must use our imagination to complete the picture, feel the emotions, and find the meaning. This active involvement is what makes Shakespeare's plays feel so alive even after hundreds of years. Holland also uses psychology, especially Freudian ideas, to explain how the plays affect us. He thinks that Shakespeare taps into deep parts of the mind, including childhood fears, desires, and dreams. When we watch or read a play, we bring our own unconscious feelings to it. This helps explain why different play in many ways. Shakespeare creates space for the imagination to work differently in each person. In the final part of the book, Holland reflects on the meaning of Shakespeare's work as a whole. He says that Shakespeare's imagination is not just about fantasy or invention, it is a way of understanding life. Through drama, Shakespeare helps us make sense of love, loss, power, guilt, joy, and identity. His plays do not offer easy answers, but they open up questions that matter deeply, and they do so in a way that makes us feel as well as think.